Hi, everybody. Welcome to Colorado Inside Out. I'm your host, Dominic Dezzutti. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get a quick take on Denver making the final 4 cities in contention to host the 2016 Republican National Convention. Patty Calhoun from Westward, we did a great job with the 2008 Democratic National Convention, but is the RNC in 2016 really in Denver's cards?
It could be. I mean, to be fair, 2 did pull out of contention, which is why we're down to 4. We weren't chosen as one of the 4 out of the 6. 2 just left. But we'll have a site visit. I think a lot will depend. Will Republicans here be able to raise enough money to pay for this convention at the same time they're pouring money into Cory Gardner's campaign? Could give Cory Gardner a little boost if it gets announced here, but I don't think people are going to care all that much about the convention coming and decide they'll vote for every Republican on the ballot in November as support.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. Is it more important for the RNC to be in a swing state like Ohio or Colorado, or in a profitable Republican state like Texas?
Well, it's most important to be in a functional state. The DNC in 2008, I think people worked as hard as they could to run it well, but there were problems. When I was covering it for the Rocky Mountain News, I talked to delegates from other states who their delegation was put in a south suburban hotel. The transportation was terrible, and so they ended up missing many hours of the convention. I do think it would help Republican candidates in 2016 wherever to have it here or Ohio, another swing state, because I think when you're a volunteer, I mean, even like those people who at the DNC were the recycling monitors to make sure you put it in the right bin. Well, they got involved and they legitimately felt they were part of the process, and that's the thing that says, oh, I'm invested in this, so now I'm going to go out and help more and do more door-to-door. And likewise, the huge crowd that saw the Obama Colossus of Rhodes speech at Mile High Stadium, because they were personally there, in a way they had an investment in having him succeed, and so probably that helped his volunteers and donations as well.
Eric Sonderman, analyst at SC2. If you're a potential Republican candidate in the next year or 2 in Colorado, do you want the convention here?
Probably so. It all depends on how the convention goes. There was some speculation in advance of 2008 that if there were enough, that was before Occupy, but Occupy types and whatever, and if the convention got too fringy, it could hurt the Democratic brand in the state. It did anything but that. It helped the Democratic brand in Colorado, which was already on the rise. So it depends on how this convention goes. Some conventions are successes, some are not. I mean, witness Houston back in 1992, the Bush 1 renomination, where it was sort of almost a holy war on the convention floor, and it damaged the Republican brand. So it depends. Good for Las Vegas for not being in the mix. I mean, a convention in the middle of summer in Las Vegas, what could go wrong there? We're down to 4 cities. I think we would have made the cut even if those other 2 had not withdrawn. I think David and Patty are right. It depends what the Republican National Committee is looking for. Dallas has all kinds of money to throw at this thing. Raising the money in Dallas will not be an issue. But where do you want to be in the middle of summertime? Do you want to be in Dallas, Kansas City, Cleveland, or do you want to be in Denver? I think Denver and Colorado, as the purple state or one of the purple states, has a lot going for it.
That's an easy pick for me. Alicia Caldwell from the Denver Post, wrap it up for us.
Well, we had Pete Kors into our editorial board to talk about the bid, and this was right before, maybe a couple of weeks before the last 4 were announced. And he said that organizers or the National Committee were very adamant about the ability to raise money, and that really seems to be everything, frankly. I mean, you have to have a venue that's good on TV, having experience is good, being compact is good, having decent transportation where you don't have to take 2 shuttle buses, as they did in Tampa, for instance, is also good. But but national Republicans were really dismayed when they had to pull Mitt Romney off the campaign trail to raise money for Tampa because they hadn't had quite enough. So having that financial backing so there are no distractions, I think, is really paramount at this point. So we'll see.
Between new fundraising numbers and a recent debate performance, Scott Gessler seems to have had a good week. Gessler's campaign raised over $28,000 during the first 2 weeks of May, outraising all of his GOP opponents. Meanwhile, Governor Hickenlooper's campaign made a major media buy, spending nearly $1 million, but still has over $750,000 on hand. Patty, we're about a month away from the actual GOP gubernatorial primary. Do we have a front runner?
No, we don't have a front runner, except maybe the people of Colorado who get to vote in this primary, because they certainly have quite a choice. And it's fun watching how these different positions have been jockeying. Earlier this week, the Gazette in Colorado Springs basically called on Gessler and Mike Kopp to pull out so that Beaupre could beat the evil Tom Tancredo. You know, I like it that Tom Tancredo is just, I'm going to run just because I'm mad and I've got some things I want to say. People like cranky independents in Colorado. I don't know if enough people like cranky independents in Colorado for Tom Tancredo to take the top line on this, but I don't see, Bob Beaupre is going to have a tough fight. I think Republicans are tired of being force-fed candidates that they don't think are going to win.
David, if you're any of these candidates, is it going to be this photo finish, or does somebody have the momentum? We've seen endorsements from Beaupre, a better cash month for Gessler, and they're still chasing quite the front runner in Governor Hickenlooper. But what do you make of the primary race at this point?
I'd say all four have a chance to win it, and they all have their diverse strengths and weaknesses. As Gessler pointed out recently, Tancredo and Beaupre both lost governor's races in the past. So do you really feel they're the right guys to win? Beaupre picked up an important endorsement recently from the Pikes Peak Firearms Coalition. That is, of all the gun groups in Colorado, and obviously the NRA has the most members, but they're a national organization. They don't endorse in primaries usually. They're the largest by far grassroots gun group in Colorado that's actually authentic rather than a direct mail fundraising operation like the Dudley Brown's Brand X. So I think that matters a lot. And that's against three other candidates who also had pretty good records on the gun issue. Tancredo is sort of a high risk but high reward if you're a Republican strategist. He's, I think, by far the guy who has the best crossover potential to win Reagan Democrats because the immigration issue, while highly unpopular among the Chamber of Commerce types, is very popular among the tradesmen who have seen their jobs go away over the last 15 years. You can look at the United Kingdom Independence Party, which they just had local elections there and is doing spectacularly well and really upsetting the whole thing, also running on that same issue. And they're not running because that's not because they're racist. Immigrants from Poland are whiter than the people in England, but it's still a loss of jobs and a real concern to the working class.
Eric, it doesn't seem to be a very bitter primary so far. They haven't done the usual Republican circular firing squad yet. I mean, there's still a month to go. They give them some credit. But from where you look at it right now, if you had to put a bet on one of the horses, who has the momentum?
I don't know that anyone has momentum. Momentum implies forward movement, forward energy, and I don't see a lot of movement or energy in this primary. I'll start with, and I might be a broken record on this, we have such an archaic system here in Colorado. One of these days we ought to get it right. We moved from an early August primary in the doldrums of summer to a late June primary, also in the doldrums of summer. Other states, which are having primaries in August, May, and June without this archaic, antiquated caucus process where half a dozen insiders show up and pull the parties to their respective polls. Those primaries at a decent time of year have gotten decent turnout. I'm not sure that there's going to be a heck of a lot of turnout here. Tom Tancredo is my default front runner until somebody knocks him off that perch. I might be wrong in my supposition, but my supposition is just based on the brand, the Tom Tancredo brand. He's good for about a third of the vote. If I'm right, then that leaves 2/3 of the vote to split up three ways. Does anyone get a big enough slice of that 66% pie that'd be bigger than Tancredo's 33? Now, if I'm wrong and Tancredo's default slice is only a 25% slice, then somebody else will win it. But that's sort of my supposition here. I will half agree and half disagree, but mostly disagree with David. David refers to Tom as a high-risk, high-reward candidate. I agree on the high risk. I do not agree on the high reward. I don't think there are any serious Republican strategists or even many serious Republican money people who regard Tancredo as the high reward candidate that they want to put in that fight against Hickenlooper, that they think can give Hickenlooper a run for his money, that they think cannot damage the Republican brand and therefore damage Cory Gardner, which is really their priority this time around. I think a lot of Republicans, establishment Republicans if you will, are scared to death of Tancredo being the standard bearer here.
Alicia, will that be the tiebreaker? Will the Gardner supporters, people who are going to put in thousands and thousands of dollars for Gardner's campaign this year, will they be the tiebreaker in this four-way race?
Well, they'll certainly be motivated to come out for this race, so I think they will help. But if you look at each of these four candidates and how they poll against Hickenlooper in the latest Quinnipiac poll, they're all about 40%. So it would seem to be a tie, but it's not really when you dig down and you look at the favorability ratings, for instance. Someone like Gessler, who is how we got into this question to begin with, has about a 19% favorability rating, as opposed to Beaupre, who has 27, Tancredo has 31, Kopp has 12. Most of these guys just have people don't know them. The numbers also show Gessler's 68% of independents and 60% of Republicans don't know enough about him to make a decision on him. And the numbers are similar for Kopp. And I think with a month left, even the 28,000 that Gessler raised in this period just isn't going to be enough to get him over the hump. Tancredo did, 37% in the GOP primary in 2010. That seems to be roughly his number. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe some of those folks will go to Beaupre given the nature of the choices before them. But I do think it's Tancredo. I think it's Tancredo who will end up out front.
Well, 2 weeks from tonight, Colorado Public Television, along with our partners at CBS 4, will be hosting the gubernatorial primary with the primary debate with Mr. Beaupre, Mr. Gessler, and of course Mr. Kopp. Mr. Tancredo, of course, is not debating until if he wins the primary. But you can tune in 2 weeks, June 6th at 9 p.m. for that debate. Let's get on with the rest of the show. Governor Hickenlooper continued to meet with oil and gas industry groups this week to discuss a plan addressing the fracking proposals set to appear on the November ballot. The ideas considered so far would give more control locally to regulate drilling sites, but were more focused than previous bills. David, it seems that people want to make some progress here, but even the industry leaders who don't want to see the fracking ballot issues happen can't agree. At this point, is the energy spent on this, no pun intended, worth it?
Yeah, it's a tremendously important issue. On the one hand, you have sincerely convicted people who have watched phony movies like Gasland that think if there's fracking, they're going to get flames coming out of their water faucet. And on the other hand, it is of gigantic economic importance to Colorado, with a huge number of jobs at stake. So it's a high, and that's one of the reasons why it's not only the oil and gas industry, which of course is going to be out here, but groups like the Wheat Growers Association and other rural groups that are not energy per se are also on the side of the oil and gas groups, because they believe that the existing rules have responsible, safe, highly regulated energy recovery going on right now. Jared Polis is not that much of a compromise type guy either, and I respect him for that in general. So I think we will have a huge ballot issue coming down. But again, I think there is an easy compromise. If you're a local city or county and you want to ban fracking, go ahead, but you also give up your share of the statewide oil and gas revenue fees.
Eric, is there a positive end game here that you can see with the progress we've seen so far?
Probably not. I could be surprised here. And if Governor Hickenlooper and others can pull a rabbit out of the hat, more power to him. Governor Hickenlooper would be the biggest beneficiary if he can make this issue go away in terms of the dominant issue of the fall. You talk to business groups and others around the state, and it's the only issue. It's fracking, fracking, fracking in terms of what is dominating the discussion. I'm curious as to why this massive effort to find a compromise is happening here at the end of May instead of back in February. It's not it's not as if this legislative session was all backlogged. It's not as if they had a long list of big issues they were tackling. It was a rather quiet session, rather small ball kind of session. So there was plenty of opportunity to do it in a much more timely way. I don't think the industry groups they might be inclined to a reasonable compromise, but they're not going to give a whole lot. They think they're holding the upper hand. Their polling shows that, depending on exactly what the ballot question is and other factors, that they are likely to win, and maybe to win comfortably. So they're not going to give up a whole lot in this process. And on the other side, you really have true believers who, by the nature of their conviction and their passion, aren't inclined to give up a whole lot. So I think it is a terribly difficult negotiation. I would bet against it. I would bet that we have this battle royale come fall.
Alicia, Governor Hicklebur is the governor. He should be the main person, but you don't see, at least in the headlines, a lot of his fellow Democrats stepping up. Do you think that's an attractive situation for his fellow Democrats to be involved in this fight, trying to avoid these ballot proposals?
I think there's this particular issue isn't a monolithic. There isn't monolithic opinion among Democrats. I think there are some who see pretty decent benefit to their communities from this in terms of employment, as well as the money that comes back in severance taxes. So I think people are sort of waiting it out. The other variable is that these initiatives, and there are 11 of them, when you take a look at them, they're very different. And it depends upon which one actually makes it to the polls, which one will Polis put his money behind. And I think that will also play into whether it actually passes, because a half-mile setback requirement is a lot different than, say, a 1,500-foot or 2,000-foot setback requirement. And that will play very differently in communities and have different implications for whether it's, whether it's a de facto ban or not. There are other questions about local control that give more explicit local control to communities. So, I don't think that any of these are really a slam dunk, but with any faction, so to speak, I don't think all Democrats will vote for it. But it'll be interesting to see which one actually makes it to the ballot and how those factions play out.
Patty, how long should Governor Hicklebur keep trying?
Well, I think he'll probably keep trying until we're past the point of no return, because he doesn't have anything to lose in this. It's not as though he's going to be running against a Republican who's anti-fracking. So it's the winners here are going to, but I don't see a compromise coming before the ballot. The winners here are going to be the political campaign strategists, and the TV stations will get all the advertising, because it's going to be huge, huge amounts of campaign funding on both sides going into this. It won't affect the governor's race, except it'll make the governor's race more rancorous, because it'll make the whole campaign season more ugly. But it will really, I think, affect the Cory Gardner-Udall campaign, because there are very different positions on fracking there. So depending on how all the arguments go and how ugly it gets, that could be the campaign most affected.
Billionaire Tom Steyer has launched a major effort in what some are calling the most expensive pro-environment campaign in U.S. history. Steyer's super PAC Next Gen Climate Action will donate $100 million to key races across the country in support of Democrats, including Senator Mark Udall right here in Colorado. Eric, this could be game changer. I mean, he didn't pick out a whole lot of races. I think it was something under 20, maybe even closer to 7 or 8. If even 10, even a little bit less than that, $9 million comes in just for Udall or against Gardner on environment, that can be a significant play in Colorado. What did you think of this announcement?
I think well, first of all, I start by saying I'm shocked, because I have always considered liberals so opposed to big money in politics, and particularly
big money in politics,
and particularly
right.
big out-of-state money in politics. So it colored me very surprised. Obviously, tongue firmly in cheek. If you're looking to explain Mark Udall's straddle on some issues, this is it. I mean, Tom Steyer is one of the big deals in Democratic politics nationally these days. And if you're looking to explain why Mark Udall is trying to duck and dodge on Keystone XL, or needing to duck and dodge, this is the explanation. If you need to explain why President Obama continues to duck on Keystone XL. Now, after 5 years of study, he may try to avoid that issue entirely for the length of an 8-year presidency. This is it. I mean, Tom Steyer's money and the animation and passion of the environmental left in the Democratic Party is not to be underestimated. It is a major political factor here. That is real money. I ultimately don't think the Udall-Gardner race is going to come down to money, because both sides are going to have so much of it. It's the old, it's the arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union. It's mutual assured destruction. Neither side will be under-resourced here. At the end of the day, climate change strikes me as one of these issues where there is this huge disparity between elite opinion and mainstream opinion. I think mainstream opinion, there's an acceptance that there is some warming happening and that it's probably man-made warming, but I think there's also a skepticism about how fast that warming is happening and whether the costs of dealing with it are ultimately worth the cost. And it just, in poll after poll after poll, it is not a motivating issue to most voters. It is not one that gets you out to the polls and determines how you vote. So that's what he's up against here.
Alicia, can this be a game changer in Colorado?
If you think about how Tom Steyer could have spent his money, it could have gone through back channels to support Mark Udall, if that's really what he intended. It strikes me that what he really intends is to put Mark Udall on the spot, to take a position, a strong position, advocate strongly for this. And you see that more often than not. It's becoming an increasing trend, it strikes me these days, to try to use your money to leverage, to get a public position out of somebody. So I think it will certainly fuel the debate about climate change in Colorado, and I'm not so sure that will necessarily be to Mark Udall's benefit.
Patty, if there's a lot of money for the fracking ballot proposals, assuming they make the ballot, and then there's a lot of talk about the environment, and for some reason they're losing, do you want to be Mark Udall with a lot of money pushing climate change for you in the middle of a Colorado election?
Well, I think the climate warming we're seeing is indeed the hot spot that Mark Udall is finding himself in. It's going to be a really tough campaign for him on this one, because he's almost damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Here's this big campaign that's going to come his way, and how is he going to deal with it? What is he going to say that won't back him more into a corner? And I think with fracking, the fracking things are so complex because it's not just environmental issues and misunderstood environmental issues. It's home rule, it's local municipalities. Those are really complicated issues, and it's going to be really hard to educate voters to understand them.
David, Colorado voters are historically love being purple. If you think they're one way, they're going to go the other way. What kind of effect would a real huge climate change campaign make around Colorado voters?
Well, I think it'll initially be successful because there's a strong scientific consensus that for the next several months there's going to be a warming period in Colorado. But then there are also many scientists who say that from roughly September onward, there's going to be a cooling period that will continue through the November elections. Tom Steyer calls the people who disagree with him anti-science. Well, the fact is the scientific data show there hasn't been any global warming for 17 years. We've had these people like Al Gore tell us that it was scientifically proven that it was very likely that the Arctic ice cap would have melted by now. We've had a lot of hysterical predictions that haven't come true. Mark Udall in February was saying, please God, don't let this election be about Obamacare, because then I'm going to lose. And so it's not. It's going to be about energy. But the problem is his donor and his convictions, he's a very sincere guy on this issue, are out of step with the mainstream of Colorado. Excel, responsible energy development, that's the opposite of the Tom Steyer approach. And I think there's a big chance that the Senate race becomes an energy referendum, which would be terrible for Udall. But at least if he's going to lose on that, he's going to lose on something he really sincerely believes in.
Let's get to our very favorite part of the show, Disgrace of the Week. Patty, start us off.
Well, no one will ever hear this disgrace because our entire audience tonight is going to be at the Colorado Symphony Orchestra High Notes concert, smoking marijuana. So they'll never hear it. I think it's an interesting ploy by the Colorado Symphony Orchestra. They're trying to young their audience. They're going to get a lot of attention. But I have the suspicion that the national attention will make this town look like a bunch of crackpots.
David.
The Westminster City Council, which is abandoning a proposal to require landlords to distribute voter information to new tenants because they said and the landlords persuasively said it's much too burdensome and unfunded mandate on us, and we're going to get sued over it. And so they have a good point, but this also ruins the Independence Institute's plan to piggyback onto that, a mandate to distribute concealed handgun application forms.
Foiled again. Eric.
Former Colorado House Speaker and current Director of the Public Utilities Commission, Doug Dean. Vincent Carroll in the Denver Post, Alicia's colleague, has done a great job of exposing what seems to be a fairly blindsided approach he took to the legislators in reducing insurance requirements for taxi companies. This relates to the whole issue of Uber and Lyft and the transportation network companies. I love that the taxi companies keep preaching this notion of a level playing field when they fought the idea of competition or a level playing field for 20 years. But Doug Dean seemingly, it's a very inconsistent record, but he secretly, it appears, lowered these insurance requirements for the taxi guys. And lastly, to Governor Hickenlooper, is this really the guy you want directing your Public Utilities Commission? And does he reflect your policies there?
Alicia.
Terry Makita, the El Paso County Sheriff. The Colorado Springs Gazette published a rather lengthy list of accusations that include sexual impropriety, dismantling oversight over the budget, harassing treatment of employees. If a quarter of this is true, it's pretty bad stuff.
Less than a minute, say something nice quickly.
Senator Mike Johnston, who has done great work for education as a principal and now in the legislature, and fortunately he's going to be able to give his speech at the Harvard Business School.
David.
Microsoft for its victory over the NSA, the Obama NSA and spy network, winning a case saying that when the government comes looking for a customer's records, Microsoft has a right to tell the government about that.
Eric.
It's Memorial Day weekend. Let's remember what that's about. And it's not a mattress sale, and it's not just about barbecues or the coming of summer. It's about something far more important.
Hear, hear.
I've got an additional NSA item. Congress for actually showing that it can move in one direction on NSA reform. While it might not be perfect, at least they're doing something.
That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for tuning in. We tape this show every Friday at 12:15, and now you can watch it live at cpt12.org. That's right, we're live streaming Colorado Inside Out every Friday at 12:15, so spend a part of your lunch hour with us. For our viewers watching our live stream right now, stay tuned for a special behind-the-scenes segment. And for our broadcast viewers, we'll see you next week. For everyone here at Channel 12, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching. Good night.